Madam Speaker, I thank all the members who spoke, sharing their views on the MND review report and also their actual ground experience running their town councils. Several MPs, including Denise Pua, Zainal, Teo Ho Bin, Lang Eng Hua, offered many suggestions for Senior Minister of State Lee Shan to consider when he reviews the town councils. And I'm sure he will take them up. Let me respond to the key comments. The review team has established that the AIM transaction has complied with Town Councils Act and the Town Council's financial rules. Ms. Sylvia Lim unfortunately continued to question whether the AIM transaction truly complied with the Town Councils Act, since the tender period was only posted for 2 weeks in the first instance. Under the Town Council's financial rules, the minimum period of tender notice should not be less than 3 weeks. Nonetheless, latitude is given to the chairman of the Town Council to approve a shorter period of tender notice. The review team has established that the PAP Town Councils have obtained the necessary approvals for a shorter 2-week tender notice, as well as a subsequent extension of 1 week. So in the end, the tender period was actually 3 weeks. In fact, the Town Council financial rules also provides latitude to Town Councils or their chairmen to waive requirement to call for tender altogether. Ms. Sylvia Lim would be familiar with this because she exercised this latitude when her Town Council waived competition and appointed FM Solutions and Services Private Limited, FMSS, as their managing agent in 2011. MND left the appointment to her best judgment and did not object. We have to apply the Town Councils Act and the Town Council financial rules fairly, evenly, and consistently. Ms. Sylvia Lim said that the tender was only open in substance because each of the directors of the company had to have adequate experience in the operations and functions of a town council. The tender documents requirements have been drawn up in the interests of the residents. It was important that the vendor should have an established track record in town council operations, given that the extensive and specialized nature of town council administration, involving thousands of HDB blocks and associated common property. AIM was not the only company that could have qualified. For one thing, Ms. Hao Wing Fan, with her extensive experience in town council work, could have formed a company with others like her and submitted a bid for this. After all, this is what she, her husband, and her Aokang Town Council colleagues did when they set up FM Solutions and Services several days before the setting up of AH Town Council. And they went on to win the contract to be the Town Council's managing agent, which is worth millions of dollars without even a tender being called. In reality, the Town Councils did not receive any feedback from prospective tenderers to change or vary this requirement. In fact, from the informal feedback obtained, the sense is that stringency of requirement was something else. It was that the contract for the transaction ensured against any increase in maintenance costs. This is a maintenance cost by NCS, even as sourcing and development of a new generation TCMS was pursued. This particular requirement, coupled with the fact that there is no certainty that the vendor will be given the contract to develop the next generation software, explains why the other vendors were not interested. Ms. Sylvia Lim mentioned that the vendor told the media that there was insufficient information in the tender document. There was a 3-week tender notice period during which potential vendors could seek clarifications from the town councils or ask for a tender briefing. So there was sufficient opportunity for potential bidders to obtain the necessary information for their assessment. Ms. Lina Chiam asked how can there be no conflict of interest, even if nobody made money. She said she's not sure if any lawyer would be satisfied with how conflict of interest has been defined in the review report. Let me share that the review team had consulted the Attorney General, who has confirmed the legal position taken in the report on this. Some Workers' Party members could not accept the review report's conclusion that there was no conflict of interest in the AIM transaction. I had explained earlier the background to the enactment of the TCs Act and the political nature of TCs. And this is the context against which the AIM transaction needs to be examined. Let me state the case from MND's perspective. As the administrator of the Act, we are the authority, we own this policy. We are the policy formulator and the policy administrator for this Act. TCs are specifically set up to establish a link between elected MPs and their town council. The Act, by design, does not prohibit transactions between the town council and party-related entities or persons. Latitude has always been given to MPs to manage their town councils according to their best judgment and be accountable to their residents politically. Town councils run by MPs from all political parties have at one time or another appointed party supporters or former candidates to provide services to the town councils they run. The Straits Times gave some examples in an article on May 7, so did Lianhe Chaobao on May 11. Mr. Pritam Singh suggested that going forward, to avoid conflict of interest, companies owned by political parties should not be allowed to transact with town councils. As I mentioned, the Town Councils Act presently does not prohibit transactions with party affiliates. However, if we choose to do this, as what Mr. Pritam Singh has proposed, then we must impose it across all town councils and also not just narrowly for party-owned companies, but companies owned by people in various forms of party affiliations, like ex-party members and party supporters, and even their immediate families. If we do this, we would of course be prohibiting the appointment of FM solutions and services by the AH Town Council as well. Ms. Evelyn mentioned about FNSS and some comments about MND's providing this information or in response to media query, and she asked about this point. So let me elaborate on what is this entity called FMSS. FMSS was formed by a group of Aokang Town Council employees. It is now principally owned by Ms. Hao Wing Fan and her husband, Mr. Danny Low, who, although not a staff of Aokang Town Council, was a contractor of services to Aokang Town Council when his wife, Ms. Hao, was the estate manager. Apart from their long association with the Workers' Party's leadership, Mr. Danny Low and Ms. Hao are Workers' Party supporters who acted as assenter and proposer to the Workers' Party team of candidates led by Mr. Yao Shin Leong to contest in Ang Mo Kio GRC in the 2006 general election. Thus, if you look at the substance of this contract between AH Town Council and FMSS, the following points are quite striking. First, FMSS was formed on May 15, 2011, 4 days after the 2011 GE. The company was principally owned by two very close WP party associates. They were husband and wife and were providing services to Aokang as well. And they were secretary and deputy secretary of AH Town Council. Second, the management contract, which is which was worth 5.2 million a year, was awarded to FMSS without tender. Third point, 1 year later, AH Town Council did go for a tender, where FMSS was the only tenderer. And a 3-year contract worth 16.8 million was given to FMSS. Fourth point, subsequently, another 3-year contract for EMSU, Essential Maintenance Services Unit, was also given to FMSS, which is worth $3.9 million. So, Madam Speaker, when we talk about public interest, how would the work Mr. William characterize the FMSS transactions? In substance, has public interest been protected? Would she take the position that contracts like these given to close party associates be prohibited? In the AIM contract, public interest was enhanced. Can the same be said for the FMSS contract? In this respect, let me also remind members that Mrs. Lina Chiam too was appointed Potong Pasir Town Council Secretary in February 2010, and she was paid a monthly salary. She was then the Singapore People's Party's CEC member and later became its vice chairman in August that year, 2010. MND accepted that, consistent with this approach to allow all town councils the same latitude with regard to party affiliation, and we did not interfere with any of these transactions. And I think that should be the same fair, consistent approach that we apply to all parties, whether it's PAP, WP, or SP. Mr. William and Mr. Pritam Singh asserted that the transfer of ownership of the management software from the town councils to AIM was improper and against the residents' interests. Mr. William, of course, has been spreading this narrative ever since MND found her town council to be lacking in performance. She asked, essentially, why should the town councils pass the ownership of an essential software to AIM only to lease it back at a fee from AIM? The review report has given a detailed explanation for this arrangement. This was a sale and lease back arrangement which is perfectly normal in the industry. Just because at the end of it, the software has been transferred to AIM does not mean that it is at all improper. Now, why did the PAP town councils do so? Just when the software was nearing obsolescence. Precisely because the software would soon be obsolescent, the town councils needed to move on to next generation software, centralizing the software ownership in one entity so that the latter could negotiate with potential vendors as one would greatly facilitate the process. But as the town councils needed to continue to function, the town councils would still need to make use of the software. The sale and leaseback arrangement was a practical solution to this problem. Moreover, as new generation software would need time to develop, the town councils would also need the NCS to continue to maintain the system in the meantime. The tender specifications further required a successful bidder to undertake to secure extensions of NCS maintenance contract at no extra cost to the town councils. Essentially, AIM took on the financial risk of any fee escalation by NCS. By structuring the tender in this manner, the town councils had protected the interests of their residents to the maximum degree. This is the exact opposite of Mr. Williams' incorrect narrative. How did the town councils benefit? First, they enjoy a net savings as AIM actually made a loss on the 2010 transaction. Second, the NCS maintenance contract was extended for 18 months at the same cost without any fee increase. Third, the town councils are now on the development path to the next generation software. Mr. William also argued that AIM as a $2 company could not be qualified to deliver on its commitments and therefore placing residents' interests under undue risk. I accept the point that in general, the fact that a company had just $2 of paid-out capital must raise a flag and need to be considered. But in this case, AIM is not an ordinary $2 company. It was set up by the PAP specifically years ago to help its PAP MPs do a better job running their town councils. The party was standing behind it, effectively guaranteeing its performance. Moreover, there was a track record, as it was responsible for the earlier version of the town council's management software. That is the difference between AIM and any other $2 company that gave the PAP town councils confidence to enter into this contract with AIM. And as it turned out, did AIM perform as required? Yes. AIM performed its duty successfully. First, centralizing the software did not cost the town councils any extra money. Second, AIM has helped the town councils to extend the NCS software maintenance contract at no increased cost in the past for 18 months. This has saved money for town councils and hence their residents. Third, AIM has got the town councils onto a new generation software to be developed by NEC under a new leasing arrangement. This was a major objective of the town councils when they called the 2010 tender to sell and lease back their obsolescent software. This necessary task has now been fully completed. The town councils have benefited from the AIM services. Mr. William further suggested that the timing of the sale of the TCMS to AIM just before the 2011 GE shows that the transaction was politically motivated. This is a rather paranoid view which distorts and ignores the facts. What are the facts? First, the town councils brought in Deloitte and Touche to evaluate their software not in the year just before the 2011 GE, but as early as June 2009. Second, software becomes obsolescent with time as the hardware and software platforms on which it is written are regularly upgraded. Those of us who have to deal with software installations and software platforms, we know that. The town councils knew that their software, which had been developed in 2003 and built upon Windows XP and Oracle Financial 11 platforms, would have to be upgraded to the next generation soon. D&T confirmed it after conducting their review. Windows XP had been superseded, in fact 2 generations, by Windows Vista and Windows 7. Worse, Oracle was also soon phase out its Financial 11 platform. They therefore recommended a software leasing arrangement for the town councils to consider in line with the general industry practice. Third, the town council's software maintenance contract with NCS was expiring in October 2010. And that was why the town councils invited the open tender in mid-2010. These were compelling considerations which had nothing to do with the timing of the GE. Ms. Sylvia Lim further argued that the residents' interests were placed at risk by AIM's one-sided termination clause. Now, all commercial contracts come with a termination clause. And termination can be initiated by both sides after observing a period of notice. Question is, is it one-sided? The review team has studied the specific termination clause in question and noted in its report that the TCs, the town councils, had valid reasons to insert it. The AIM contract is a lump sum contract, and a termination clause to address material changes to the scope and duties of the town council will help reduce the vendor's business risk and hopefully fetch a better price. There are now, of course, we have heard repeatedly two interpretations of what actually happened. AIM insisted that it did not initiate the termination and that it was the Aljunied Aukang Town Council which gave notice of its intention to use its own software. Only on receipt of that notice did AIM then terminate the contract. The AH Town Council's version is that they believed that it would be terminated and so decided to start sourcing for their own IT software system. The review team has included a full exchange of letters in their report, and we will let the readers draw their own conclusions. I am honestly, Madam Speaker, disappointed that Ms. Sylvia Lim has chosen to construe the AIM transaction in such a sinister light and to suggest that the PAP has used the AIM transaction to trip up the incoming MPs. It's like what the Chinese says, 杯弓蛇影, seeing a snake in a cup when actually it is nothing more than a reflection of a bowl hung on the wall. In any case, are we so stupid? Are we so stupid? As the Workers' Party themselves pointed out, the people who will suffer are the residents. Why would we want to deliberately disrupt the lives of residents in Aljunied? Would the WP just keep quiet and not make a political issue out of it? Who then would get the blame? Why would the PAP want to hurt the interests of residents in Aljunied and alienate them? How could we hope to regain Aljunied if we did this? Ms. Sylvia Lim says that PAP is not concerned about constituents sitting in their Cessna getting hurt should it crash land. This is self-righteous and, pardon me for saying so, arrogant. Many of us in this House have been serving Singaporeans for decades, long before she entered this House. Please, don't behave as if you are the only patriot in this House. Do you honestly believe that the Workers' Party would blame themselves if they crash? Even if it has nothing to do with a plane engine, but because they are bad pilots? No way. I think they will also start pointing fingers at everybody else. So when Ms. Sylvia Lim says that the AIM transaction shows that PAP see hurting people in Aljunied as just collateral damage in a bigger political game, I'm disappointed by such a comment. What is our bigger political game? It is about winning back Aljunied, not about doing something petty that will just upset everybody off and make us lose Aljunied permanently. Indeed, who has been playing politics with this AIM transaction? If Ms. Sylvia Lim was really concerned about the termination of the contract by AIM, why didn't she simply write a letter? Write to AIM asking for extension, rather than assume it would not be acceded to. And as events demonstrated, AIM readily acceded to her subsequent request for extensions, not once, but twice. Maybe pride or political motive got in the way, and residents' interests became secondary. Please take a good look at Mr. Sito. who dealt with a similar transitional problem in Potong Pasir. He didn't feel anything wrong to ask for an extension of the service of the general manager who had served for many years under Mr. Chiam Sitong. He placed residents' interests first, and because he ventured to ask, he ensured a successful transition and handing over at Potong Pasir. The transition there was not without problems. There were many. But instead of bad-mouthing or finding excuses through attributing problems to his predecessor, he and his team worked quietly, round the clock, to minimize any disruptions to their residents. That is the professional way of dealing with handing over. If there's anything suspicious about timing, it is really the timing of Ms. Sylvia Lim raising the AIMT issue. Why didn't she raise the termination of the TCMS back in 2011 when they took over, instead of thanking AIM for agreeing to the extensions that they had requested? Why? After thanking AIM, then wait 18 months till December 2012 when the MND revealed that the Town Council's audit report had been delayed to raise this complaint against AIM. I presume she will claim that they have been too busy setting up their own system to bother about raising this issue. Anyway, I must say it has been quite effective in distracting the public from the actual situation in her town council. Ms. Sylvia Lim has also questioned the prudence in incurring unnecessary expenditure during handovers to replicate systems already developed with public funds when these systems could simply be handed over to MPs taking over. I agree. The town councils should not incur unnecessary expenditure, whether during handovers or for day-to-day operations, as these are residents' funds. And that's why, during a handover, contracts, assets and liabilities remain vested with the town council. They are accessible to the newly elected MPs when they take over. It's not necessary for the new town council management to terminate the existing contracts and incur additional costs to replicate existing systems unless they choose to. However, software contracts have unique difficulties with such an arrangement. There have to be significant software changes when boundaries are changed. This happens with town councils even when the political party remains unchanged. Where political parties change, the operating software inevitably has to evolve to suit the new MP's management style and operational preference. As Mr. Zainal Sapari put it just now, I quote, "The reality is that there will be costs incurred whenever there is a change of town council, and which can be significant," unquote. But I agree that we should try to minimize it, and this requires some give and take on the part of the two parties involved in the changeover. There was some comment about the TCMS software by, I think, Mr. Peng, about why this is a software that town council spent almost $24 million built up, and why hand it over or tendered it out for $140,000. We all know that software has limited shelf life. IT platforms is so progressive, so dynamic, that upgrades is almost inevitable every few years. You know, when this AIM episode was raised, what struck me was this. I used to run National University Hospital. Then Health Minister Mr. Goh appointed me to start up a newly built hospital. And the hospital was almost built, and deadline to open the hospital already announced to the public. And my team had to start it up. We were given reliable memory 4 or 5 months to start it up. And one of the things that was missing at that time was software. Because to run a hospital, you need computer software. Yeah. And yes, if you don't have one software, it's very hard to run a hospital properly. And you do it manually, that's impossible. But we managed it 4 or 5 months. How? Because the industry is very well developed. There are off-the-shelf software which you can pick and buy, and then you have to suit your processes to suit the software, to be in accordance with the software. So that is one easy option, and that was the option I did in the case of NUH, successfully opened. But if you want bells and whistles, then of course you have to spend time developing, modifying, changing the software code. So it cannot be an off-the-shelf solution. So, but in the case of NUH, we started off with an off-the-shelf, settle in because get the priority right, and then over time we develop, add in all the bells and whistles, and we had a very sophisticated software when I left the hospital. The town council is the same thing. It is not as if it is so crippling without one. There are solutions available. It's up to you. But in this case, the bottom line is this. AIM did not terminate. They were quite willing to extend if only you ask. But if you don't ask, why should they offer to say that, because you may feel insulted. And precisely because softwares go into obsolescence very quickly, if you examine the town council's financial rules, hardware is classified as an asset to be depreciated. Software is not. Software is just treated as an operating expenses. Expense of straight away. It does not get depreciated. So, back to the TCMS when it was tendered out. Yes, it cost the town councils 24 million to develop, but by the time it was hitting obsolescence, how much is it worth? Very little, nothing, probably zero, And the tenders prove it. There were nobody interested in it. AIM had to step in because if they do not step in, the town councils will be left in the lurch, which was the point that Associate Professor Eugene Tan made in his Today article, I think of May 6. Anyway, I'm glad that several Workers' Party members, Silver Lim, etc., make comments expressing great concern about financial prudence and the need to ensure that town councils minimize the cost in the interest of the residents. Well, Madam Speaker, so do we. Although, frankly, how the PAP and the Workers' Party does it may be different. For instance, in Aljunied, the management agency rate which FMSS charge Aljunied Aokang residents, we found, is 20% higher than the rate charged by the former Aljunied Town Council's managing agent when he was under Mr. George Yeo. To be precise, the new rate, when it was under George Yeo, it was $6.51 per unit, per housing unit, per month. Now, it is 7.87 cents in financial year 11, the first contract, and then up to $8.04 per unit per month now, 20% higher. In fact, FMSS rate is more than 50% higher than the rate charged in Tampines Town Council, which is of similar size. Tampines rate is about $5.15 per month per unit. In fact, it came down a little bit, $4.99 last year. I assume the residents living in the Aljunied are aware of all this and find them acceptable. I think some MPs talk about this AIM not making any profit. Actually, there's nothing odd about this. As I said, AIM was set up by PAP to help its MPs run their town councils. Because if the town councils do not perform, it will reflect on the MPs and affect their future election prospects. PAP has every interest to ensure its MPs succeed, and that's why AIM did not seek to make a profit out of the 2010 transaction. As I said just now, the members are aware that Workers' Party supporters set up FMSS after the GE on May 15th. And a legitimate question is, what was the motive behind the formation of FMSS? Surely it is also to help the Workers' Party MPs run their town council, is it not? The same latitude given to the PAP town councils is applied to the Workers' Party's town council as well by MND. Workers' Party members raised some examples from the Punggol East handover to illustrate the point that the handover process is highly politicized. However, the version from Mr. Zainal Sapari carries a slightly different flavor. More importantly, I must clarify that the Punggol East handover and the Aljunied handover are different from the point of view of the Town Councils Act. The Act allows up to 90 days handover for transfer of properties from one town council to another. This applies to Punggol East. The two parties had 90 days to complete the handover. But when the MP changes, either from the same or different party, changeover is immediate. This was what happened in Mr. Sito's case in Potong Pasir. He moved in immediately, took charge, took responsibility, ensured a successful changeover. This was what was supposed to happen in Aljunied, but sadly, it did not. After an election, newly elected MPs assume office as town councillors immediately and assume legal responsibility for the town when the relevant orders are gazetted. But we recognize that the new team may need some time to fully take over the day-to-day operations. Hence, all contracts, including the managing agent contract, are transferred, and the previous MA can continue to run the TC while the new management team eases in. But any future contracts will have to be negotiated under the ambit of the new team. Clearly, it would not be appropriate for the outgoing town council to make long-term decisions on behalf of the new team. Mr. Pritam Singh and Mrs. Lina Chiam added their flavor of this politicization of town councils and raised old topics like MND's upgrading project, CIPC. Residents in opposition wards are not excluded from the selection of upgrading programs such as HIP, Home Improvement Program, and NRP, Neighborhood Renewal Program. When selecting projects, MND will try to spread out the projects among the wards and among the town councils, and priority always given to older blocks. Within each town, we also give weight to the town council's ranking of projects. Ms. Silvernim will know that this year, her town council has been given 3 upgrading projects, 2 HIP and 1 NRP. No other town councils have more than 3 projects. My own town council has only 1 project. In accordance with her town council's priority ranking, 2 of these projects are in Aokang, 1 in Aljunied. However, let me add one point. Any smooth implementation and completion of upgrading program requires cooperation among all parties. I think I've repeated myself several times now. I believe in give and take, because if you do not want to cooperate, no amount of work can be done. But if you are willing to give and take both sides, things can move. While the HDB has done its part to roll out the programs, there have been instances where the Town Council has apparently chosen to politicize the collaboration and not cooperate fully with the HDB. I'm sorry to have to say this, but let me say it by giving an example. A Town Council, I shall not name, refused to shut down the lifts to allow LUP, lift upgrading program works to commence. It also refused to apply for the necessary licenses for the switch room for the final phase of LUP works to be carried out. And all these have caused unnecessary delays which merely inconvenience the residents. And who get the blame? HDB. We got the blame. As the Chinese saying again, 我们 exactly like 28次黄年啊. Madam Speaker, 28次黄年, the mute. 黄年 is a very bitter Chinese medicine. So you swallow hard, and yet you cannot. 有苦难言, you cannot. Exactly like this, you know. I often look at the way politics is being run in many other countries with great sadness. Instead of engaging one another to solve real-life problems, parliamentary debates are conducted more like political theatre, obsessed with only scoring political points against one another, while ignoring the serious issues facing the country. I really hope Singapore does not go down this route. Please, I think, for the sake of our children and future generation. As I said, when managing town council matters, MND officials know me and my style. My specific instruction to my colleagues has always been, treat all town councils fairly and equitably. For instance, we apply the same formula when computing grants to be disbursed to town councils. Our technical training courses are open to all town councils. We provide technical and administrative advice to all town councils promptly whenever we are approached. HDB holds regular town council dialogues with all town councils to discuss future planning developments and share best practices. And I personally comb through nominations for estate upgrading to ensure that the projects are selected based on objective criteria and that they also respect the town council's order of priority. Every town council wants MND to select more projects from their town. We try to make sure that all town councils benefit from upgrading within the overall budget that we get from MOF. I cannot satisfy all town councils, but I would always try to be fair. Madam Speaker, Parliament is now more diverse, different political parties, different opinions. But that should not prevent us from still working together for the larger good of Singaporeans. Madam, MND embarked on this review in January in the interest of transparency and maintaining trust in the system. The review team has done a thorough job. They have satisfied themselves that the AIM transaction had complied with the Town Councils Act and Town Council's financial rules. There was no misuse or loss of public funds. The residents' interests were not compromised. The report and its findings have been made public for all to see. The facts are set out in the report. Members are not disputing or contradicting the facts. They are clear. It is then wrong to try to find some other basis to cast doubts when you realize that the facts don't help you in the arguments you want to make. If any member has any information or evidence which the MND team has not uncovered or considered, please surface it. Just a while ago, PERMSEC passed me a message, handwritten, just now to say that all that has been said this afternoon in relation to the AIM transaction has also been said directly or indirectly to the review team. There is no new information or new argument that they have not considered before they drew their conclusions and wrote their report. In the process, they have pointed out some lacuna in our current Town Council's rules and recommended a review of Town Councils. This has given this House the opportunity to revisit the origin of Town Councils and our roles and responsibilities as MPs and as Town Councillors. As MPs, we are given a lot of latitude to run Town Councils. This is a significant responsibility, but it's also a very rewarding one. I call on all, including our Workers' Party colleagues, to work closely with my ministry to improve our Town Councils for the interests of our residents moving forward. Thank you.